RPGs can be a huge commitment. To some players, live service MMORPGs are more akin to a second life than they are a video game. They tend to be constantly evolving, competitive, consuming, and not to mention sometimes very expensive. I have dedicated most of my gaming life to playing RuneScape and World of Warcraft. After being pretty helplessly addicted to these games all these years, I think it's time for a change. Both of these games require a monthly subscription and really kind of add up, not to mention they get really grindy and they can be super consuming. I had some personal qualms about what was happening at the Blizzard headquarters with World of Warcraft, and I decided to step away from the game because the game started to suck, and it turns out it was because they were making an extremely toxic work environment. I spent so much time on these games with such a singular focus, it was time to break free from the narrow field of vision that was RuneScape and World of Warcraft for me, and delve into some other titles to see if I could find maybe an even better forever home MMORPG. Over the past few years, I've been looking around, finding and trying new games, and I think I've come up with a few insights that I would love to share with you. During the slump of Shadowlands, there was a lot of talk about Final Fantasy XIV. Backed by my friend group, I gave it a shot. Final Fantasy is very confusing to me. I distinctly remember trying it on PS2 when I was young, and we got completely stuck in a tutorial phase. We were stuck in a white empty room. I never figured it out and kinda gave up. There's been 16 Final Fantasy titles now, and the game has evolved quite a lot since inception. Typically, they're RPGs. However, Final Fantasy XIV decided to be an MMORPG with a monthly subscription. So I made my dude and hopped right in. I never realized that JRPGs were separated in their own category, and this game made me realize why. It was, very anime in many ways. The classes were based on weapons, which means you could change down the road fairly easily because it wasn't built into your characters. Although the classes didn't exactly align with what I am typically used to as far as like the typical classes that you usually see in like the D&D classes, you could also choose a deity and some other unique options. Every time I tried to log into this game, I was greeted by a queue. Not something I was used to, but it really wasn't too bad of a wait. The game felt really similar to WoW. The UI, the layout, the third person, the action bar, etc. But I couldn't help but notice the game felt dated for some reason, although I did realize it was released in 2010. Since I haven't really gotten into the franchise, the classic elements of the game didn't spark much nostalgia. However, I did used to watch a series called Cactar and Tonberry. Let me know if you've ever seen this. And I didn't realize until now that it has a lot of references from Final Fantasy. One thing totally blew me out of the water with this game, and that is the music. A few songs from this franchise were even used in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. It's that epic. I heard one song that I fell in love with during a cutscene called Twilight Over Thanalan. It's an absolute masterpiece that I listen to this day. In the end, I think the game was too much of a JRPG for me, and too similar to WoW. For my money, I might as well just get back into WoW, honestly. The Asian MMORPG experience continues with a little game that spiked in popularity called Lost Ark. This game suddenly got popular when it was released in the West, and served many as a filler game while waiting for Elden Ring. A lot of big streamers like Asmongold tried this game out, and it got hyped for a little while. Right off the bat, the UI, the graphics, the art style, everything about this game seemed much fresher than Final Fantasy XIV to me. It was a great looking game. The game is isometric, guided with a point and click style movement instead of a WASD. At first, I didn't enjoy this, but after playing for about 60 hours, it grew on me. Although it reminded me of playing RS3 for various reasons, even some of the abilities were really similar. Lost Ark had plenty to like. The abilities were fun, the classes were neat, the boss fights were pretty unique and interesting and well designed. One thing that was strange was the general combat. Instead of fighting enemies kind of one by one, typically you'd gather up a mob and destroy them a lot with AoE attacks. The PvE felt way too easy until you hit the bosses. Granted, there is endgame content, and the beginning is pretty much just a tutorial. It got pretty boring just smashing through enemies. One of my favorite aspects of this game was the PvP. It was very similar to WoW arenas. Set up in a 3v3 arena, you attempt to destroy the other team. Only until I played the infinite challenge of PvP did I really learn my class, and it was pretty damn fun. This made me realize that PvP is a paramount aspect of the game for me, although I can always separate that need from an RPG. One day, I logged out of Lost Ark, and never really logged back in. I was right on the cusp of finishing the main story, so I never reached endgame content. However, I have heard it wasn't all that exciting. Between the isometric gameplay, the point and click, and the art style, I'm not sure I wanted to get into it long term, although this game was pretty fun and hooked me pretty good for a while. Cyberpunk 2077. This game obviously got a bad rap from the shit show of a release, but maybe a single-player RPG is what I needed. Roughly 1 year after its release, it seemed like it cleaned up the game, and it was on sale for $30. It was a risk that I was willing to take. The game fell short on a lot of what was initially promised. For one, no multiplayer, which is a huge letdown. The world felt very full, the story complete, and I personally didn't run into any game-breaking glitches, except for one time a chair just sort of randomly went across the floor in a cutscene. For a while, I was able to dive into this cyberpunk world. It all felt familiar, but novel at the same time. They truly nailed the gritty, dark, dystopian feeling that this game was meant to be. There was a good amount of depth to it, and although the area itself was a bit small, it was very dense. The game was truly one of the most amazing single-player experiences I've had. A lot of great dialogue, amazing characters, and chilling cinematics. This game was really mind-blowing at some points. It felt like I was participating in a movie. There was a particular level in which you use a 3-dimensional security camera spy drone thing to relive a 4D security footage recording to decipher what happened. It was a really unique piece of storytelling and gameplay. The gameplay itself felt a little lackluster as far as controls go. It was a tad clunky feeling. I think it plays a bit differently than other first-person shooters, and it just takes a bit of playing to get used to before it feels fluid. The driving was a pretty big letdown. It felt like you were driving a refrigerator at all times. Keanu Reeves was a much larger part of this game than I imagined, and he did an amazing job. He seriously did so much dialogue in this game. His character was a punk rock star with a fairly predictable trope: fuck corporations, I'm punk rock. The character customization, leveling system, and abilities were all pretty interesting. A talent tree style to fit your playstyle is pretty typical. The Ripper Doc is a doctor that allows you to modify your body in a very gritty, dangerous, underground way. I felt like this was a disturbing insight into the future. Illegal, sketchy, cyborg body modifications to gain an upper hand in a world-class power struggle? Getting a little too real. The extreme dystopia, gaping wealth inequality, a plethora of mentally unwell people, and extremely invasive levels of technology, as in digital ghost virus guy being uploaded into your soul, kind of invasive. This all spells out an all too real sneak peek into the near future. Obviously this is fiction, but it doesn't seem too far off, and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it was a little depressing. The lesson I took from this game was, you don't really need PvP or even multiplayer to truly enjoy a game. I truly lack this kind of single-player RPG, and my eyes were open to how good they can be. I briefly got addicted to another unexpected RPG, Grand Theft Auto V. There's a bit of debate whether or not this game is an MMORPG or even RPG at all, but it fits the bill in my opinion. You can play in large sessions, you gain wealth and customize your character, etc. I always thought that Rockstar should consider just doing a GTA Online game, being a live service MMORPG, similar to GTA 5 Online right now, but really for the long haul. GTA 6 has been announced now, which will surely overtake GTA 5. Many will argue that Grand Theft Auto 5 has overstayed its welcome, and I think it gets overlooked sometimes. I started playing this game on the PS3, and I probably have way more time in it than I should. Even so, I haven't even completed the story mode at all, and I haven't even tried some of the endgame content up until this point. So I spent a good chunk of time figuring out how to get legitimately rich and start doing heists. I'm not sure why I got such a second win for GTA, but for a while I really enjoyed it and explored it quite well. I even got some of my friends to pick it up for a while. A quick honorable mention is Starbound. Not Starfield, Starbound. This is a 2D platformer style game, very similar to Terraria. I picked it up with a friend, which made it a lot more fun, but this game is really very good. It's surprisingly addictive and combines a lot of great things. It feels a little bit like Minecraft, a little bit like Metroid. It's an open world, or should I say open universe game, with diverse planets, more interesting than Starfield in my opinion, and a lot of unique items to decorate your base and ship with. As usual, I haven't actually finished the game because I got so carried away with doing fun stuff with my friend, exploring temples and caves, helping locals on planets, and pimping out my ship. This game is really great if you can get into platformers. I've saved the best for last with this franchise that I feel almost robbed of from overlooking. I found Monster Hunter World. This game seemed incredible and I was shocked that I hadn't really heard much of it before. The premise is fairly obvious. Hunt and kill monsters. You hunt the monsters, you fight the monsters, you skin the monsters and wear the monsters to kill the monsters better and make weapons out of monsters. The gameplay is a bit unique compared to some games. Like Final Fantasy, your weapon defines your class so you aren't completely locked in, which my indecisive ass loves. The entirety of combat is just one giant boss fight. You enter an area, get clues and track down a monster, and engage in epic combat. Each hunt is limited to 50 minutes, and some monsters take every minute of it. I've ran out of time quite a few times, so there is a DPS check in every fight. There's roughly 30 to 70 monsters in most of these titles, each with a unique fight, mechanics, and weaknesses. This game is way tougher than I thought. At first it was a bit of a cakewalk, but once I started getting into harder content, the monsters really started busting my ego down. It does get to a point of frustration. I've had to fight certain monsters like the Barioth roughly 5 or so times before I was even able to kill it. It can be discouraging and tiring when you lose a 50-minute battle for the 3rd time. You can group up, which does make it more manageable, up to 4 players. The grouping system is pretty clunky. In fact, most of the UI, the writing, and some of the controls are a little unintuitive. I think this is due to a cultural difference. It is a very Japanese game as well. So Japanese, in fact, that an excited Japanese person came into my stream one day to tell me how excited he was to see Americans enjoying the game in a very prideful way. Another example with the grouping system would be the fact that the most common way that players group together is through an SOS flare. The SOS flare is meant to be a call for help, but it just so happens to be like the most sensible way to group up. There's a pretty fat learning curve on this game. The weapons are complex, there's a lot of combos, you have to learn monsters and dodge stuff, there's weapon sharpening, different types of ammo, a whole additional mechanic called the clutch claw. In Monster Hunter Rise, it would be wire bugs. The fights are epic and long, so there's plenty of time to figure it out, but I would say it takes at least like 10 hours to get the hang of it. So between the frustrating mechanics and the clunky UI, I can see why it's a challenge for some people to get into this game. But once it clicked for me, wow, did it click. I really love this game now. There's some really cute and fun stuff in the game. The graphics, the worlds, the weapon, the armor design are all amazing. The customization and weapon building is fun, and the fact that it's challenging simultaneously makes it very rewarding as well. I had a lot of people drop by and help me while I was streaming this game, and the people were lovely. The people who are into this game are really into this game. It was not uncommon to see people with over 1,000 hours. I can't believe this game flew under my radar for so long. I've been playing World and Rise and hope to see a new title as well. It's still decently active and totally worth playing in my opinion. As usual, I still haven't completed the game entirely. I plan on doing a Monster Hunter series, summing up my time and the games as well. Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3 are two pretty big RPGs that I haven't really talked about, and I did plan on playing them. I was hoping to play Starfield, but honestly, after watching gameplay and watching a bunch of streamers play it, I kinda totally lost interest. It doesn't really look like there's a whole lot in the game, and nothing I saw compelled me to want to play that game. Sorry. Baldur's Gate 3 looks amazing and had me really intrigued, but the fact that it's turn-based and also like point and click and isometric, not to mention that you do it in like a party of 4, even if you're just a single player, is just kind of odd to me. It does look like a genuinely good game and I can appreciate that, but those two things like really turn me off to the game, and I appreciate that it's great and I might give it a shot in the future, but for now, I don't think so. Playing all these games made me ask myself, maybe I had it right all along. RuneScape and World of Warcraft have captivated me for over a decade, for a reason. The main problem I really had with these games was the pricing, and perhaps I just needed a break. Otherwise, these are kind of the best RPGs that I can imagine, or at least the best ones for me. Ultimately, this journey made me realize that, for one, PvP is something that's pretty important to me. Now, I can get it in a plethora of ways. For example, I can play first-person shooters and get that need for competition and striving to be better in other things, but I really do like being able to destroy people. So if I have that PvP need satisfied, then I can really focus on like a single-player RPG and just enjoy it as RPGs were kind of meant to be enjoyed. And even just a 30-hour single-player playthrough of a game can have way more depth than 30 hours spent on like Overwatch, for example. And I think that's a lesson that I personally needed to learn. Live service games are great because they get constantly updated, there's a lot of activity going on, and there's new things to look forward to. However, that does tend to come at a cost, and frankly, good RPGs just cost money. It's really hard to find an absolutely perfect or fantastic RPG that's completely free. I would rather pay money and have a really good game that I can dedicate a lot of time to. So the perfect MMORPG doesn't really exist. You're not going to find a game that checks like every single box for you. You really just have to find a game that suits your needs as much as you like. Sometimes good enough is good enough. Approaching some of these games with a little less attachment might be a good thing. Plus, you can play multiple games. Sometimes you might have a need that one game satisfies and another can't. I have a Steam library that is full of single-player experiences that I need to go through and have fun. There's a ton of games out there that I want to try, that I want to explore with you guys on this channel, and I really look forward to it. I think one of the biggest things that I realized is a little bit of novelty goes a long way. It can really help you out and make you feel kind of just good and give you some of that dopamine that you're chasing with video games, but also it allows for a little bit of a break so you can return to your old games with new perspective. There's a lot of games that you should really just experience to get on the same sort of literacy level as some other gamers, so you can understand references, memes. That's something that I personally really lack. So expanding your horizon and getting on some common ground with other gamers is never a bad thing. Not to mention, if you try a game and you don't like it, it's really not the end of the world. Thank you so much for watching this retrospective look at my past couple years trying some new games. I hope it was interesting to you, and I hope I brought you some insights that maybe can help you, or maybe just inspire you to try some new games. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn the bell notification on and all that stuff. I can't wait to see you in more gaming videos. We are going to make gaming videos till the end of time.